This is going to be a rather different lecture from my usual ones. It's not really intended for the Invisible College as such, although you're welcome to watch it. But it come about from a different route, you could say, and it's something that's got me thinking this last week. Now then, you may have heard of this gentleman, George Bernard Shaw, 1856 to 1950. He was a social justice warrior, a Fabian, polemicist, Marxist, critic and commentator on culture. So he is of the left, he's not a righty. He wrote half a dozen books and over 60 plays. That's what he's mainly known for, his playwrights. He was a playwright in his plays. And without doubt, he was a giant of the literary world, winning a Nobel Prize in 1925. And he's been described, in some quarters anyway, as the greatest writer in the English language since Shakespeare, certainly playwright anyway. I was going to say the English writer, but he wasn't English, he was Irish, although he lived in England most of the time. Anyway, George Bernard Shaw. And of Shaw's many plays, probably the most famous is Pygmalion. It's set in Covent Garden and its vicinity, and it has a London premiere in April 1914. It tells the story of Eliza Doolittle, a flower girl who is taken under the wing of a wealthy professor. She is transformed into a passable imitation of an aristocratic lady. So back in the day, we're talking Victorian times here, they had ladies called flower girls who would go and be street traders, basically selling flowers for you to take home to the wife. So probably not much money in it, and she comes from a very poor background, but she's doing a good, honest day's work and doing her best. Anyway, he decides, this professor that she meets, gets into an altercation with while selling flowers around Covent Garden. And the upshot is that he takes on a bet with another guy with him that he can turn her into a lady. So we'll press on with this. Now, Shaw's play was turned into a musical. You may well have seen this or seen the film called My Fair Lady, which starred Rex Harrison as Professor of Linguistics Henry Higgins, and he's a middle-aged bachelor, and he really doesn't understand women. And one of his most famous lines is, "Why can't a woman be like a man?" He sort of sings it. I say sing, I'm being polite here. Actually, Rex Harrison was a terrible singer. He sort of sings it. Anyway, why can't a woman be like a man? And he extols all the great things about men, what they do and how they are and how intelligent they are and how they think about things and what women do. They're all emotional and so on. Why can't they be like us, like a man? And Audrey Hepburn was perhaps the most famous or most beautiful actress of her generation. Already known for her role in Breakfast at Tiffany's, and if you haven't seen Breakfast at Tiffany's, I don't know where you've been, as Holly Golightly, who is a farm girl who was transformed into a Manhattan socialite. Audrey Hepburn was the obvious choice for this part. And having grown up in England, she was Dutch or half Dutch, so she partly grew up and lived in Holland, but she also lived in England and went to school here. And she could do a posh with ease, posh accents. Probably more difficult was to do the role of the Cockney flower girl, but she surpassed at this too. And if you haven't seen My Fair Lady, it is actually on YouTube. There's a paid version, you can have the proper thing if you want, or there's probably someone filmed it from the back stalls or something version also there you can watch. And I recommend it. It's perhaps a bit dated now, But I remember that when that came out, it was a very, very popular film, which everyone talked about. And Pygmalion is a social critique of the British class system. That's what you'll first realise about it. It's because of a bet that Professor Henry Higgins takes on the challenge of transforming Eliza into a lady. The test is whether she can move smoothly in high society without anyone realising her lowly origins. So she's got to lose that accent. She's got to start talking like a lady. Eliza, little Cockney from a rough background, must learn etiquette, dress sense, and above all, how to speak the King's English. Now, Shaw was a socialist, and his message is that class differences are superficial. With good education, any woman can become indistinguishable from to the manner-born lady. However, there are other levels of meaning to this play that are culturally relevant, and these are what we're going to examine here. So I'm not going to go into the whole class thing, which we still have here in England 50 years later, since the film came out. It's still there, probably never go. Anyway, that's not what we're going to be talking about. We're going to be talking about other facts about this film and about where it came from, the idea of Pygmalion came from. We're going to go into that because it's very relevant to what's happening today. Of course, Eliza nails it completely. The ugly duckling is transformed into a beautiful swan. She is accepted by even high-class ladies as one of them. You can see her in this picture. She looks absolutely gorgeous. And Professor Higgins wins his bet. The bet is that if he can do this within 6 months, the other guy will pay for her lessons, because he charges £60, I think, a day or something ridiculous. And she couldn't possibly afford that. But she wants to learn how to talk posh so she can work in a flower shop instead of being a flower girl on the street corner. That's her ambition at the beginning anyway. And he turns her into a lady. So Professor Higgins wins his bet, but by this time he has fallen hopelessly in love with his creation. As he puts it, he's become accustomed to her face. It's something like that, I think. He can't quite bring himself to say that he's fallen in love with her, but it's very obvious that he has. Her feminine presence has shattered his bachelor's complacency, and now he can't bear to lose her. So he's broken-hearted because she leaves and goes off. But in Pygmalion, the professor learns that the hard way that women are different from men, not just anatomically, but also in terms of psyche. He at first reluctantly realizes that he is in love. At the same time, she also discovers that she can't go back to her old life. He has made her a better person, and she wants to stay with him to be that person for real. So she's actually realised that she actually likes being a lady rather than a flower girl. And she doesn't want to go back home to the poverty and the misery of a drunken father and abject mother and so on. She wants to, she wants to move in this other world, this more refined world. And she misses him as well. So they're both transformed by the experience of working together. They discover that while men and women see the world differently, acceptance of these differences in outlook is the key to happiness. So that's the second level of meaning in this story. But there are other levels that we're going to go into now as well. And you'll see the relevance as we press on. So don't stay with me. This is going to go somewhere and you're going to enjoy it. Now, Pygmalion is based on a Greek myth from Cyprus. You maybe didn't know that. My Fair Lady goes back to a Greek myth. In the myth, the Cypriot women of Pygmalion's day had lost all sense of morality. they behaved like whores, and even worse, turned their backs on love. Now, the story goes that they had to eat, every woman in Cyprus had to go and sit outside the temple of love, Aphrodite's temple, and give herself to the first man that came along and asked her. This is actually something that used to happen in Babylon, which suggests that the Cypriots of this time were from, in essence, Babylonians, or they had the Babylonian religion. So in Babylon, they had this thing that every woman had to prostitute herself and put herself at risk. And the first stranger to come along and throw money in her lap, she had to go off and do it with him. It seems very, very strange. And maybe this was a myth, but that you'll find this in books about Babylon. Anyway, consequently, Aphrodite, the goddess of love, puts a curse on them. So she curses these women who've turned their backs on love. And she hardens their hearts so that they become unapproachable. It is as if they are fashioned from stone. So these stone-hearted women of Cyprus are not interested in the men. They've turned their backs on them. They've got their own thing going, their own sisterhood going. They don't need men. They don't need love. It's nonsense. They're all right as they are. Thank you very much. So in the myth, Pygmalion himself is a sculptor, and he's a bachelor, and he can't find a wife. And all these hard-hearted women don't want him. They don't want to speak to him. They don't want anything to do with men. So instead, he makes a marble sculpture in the image of his idealized woman. So he's a sculptor. He makes a gorgeous statue. And the sculpture is so lifelike that he falls in love with it. And he even takes it to bed with him, kissing and caressing it as though it were not just a block of stone, but an actual woman. So a bit weird, you might say. But what is this poor man to do? I think we can take this as being symbolic of, partly anyway, of pornography of a sort. It's a sort of pornographic statue that he's made. And eventually he goes to the abandoned temple of Aphrodite. The women aren't going there anymore. They don't believe in love. But unlike the women of Cyprus, who've turned their backs on romantic love, he brings offerings. I don't know what the offerings were, maybe flowers or something, I don't know. Anyway, he prays to the goddess to find him a wife, one who will love him, resemble his statue, and be faithful in marriage. Not a lot to ask. You know, it's what most men want. Actually, if you're watching this and you're a lady, a single lady, I can let you into a secret. The vast majority of men want to get married. They haven't turned their backs on you. They want to get married. The trouble is, they're finding these women today unapproachable. And that's what we're going to talk about a bit later. Anyway, Aphrodite hears his prayer and is pleased. And when he gets home, to his surprise, he finds his statue has been transformed into a flesh and blood woman. They get married and later have children. Now, what's this all about? Magic with a statue turning into a woman. Well, the statue, of course, represents Pygmalion's anima, or unconscious archetype, for the perfect woman. You know, we all have our type, don't we? And you're drawn to someone who reflects your inner person, your inner opposite. In the man, it's the anima. In the woman, it's the animus. And men are attracted to an anima figure. They sometimes call her the muse. A man can fall hopelessly in love with a girl just because she is a reflection of the muse, the anima side of himself. Now I'm getting into a Jungian psychology here. We're not going down that route. But anyway, Finding such a special person, your soulmate, is the ideal of all romantic literature. You've probably read romantic novels. It's also the subject of nearly every movie ever made in that genre. Yes. Think of The French Lieutenant's Woman. Have you ever seen that? It's one of my favourite films. And the poor man, he's engaged to someone else, and he goes out on a stormy day in Lyme Regis, walks along the cob, and there's this woman at the end in the storm, and the waves are crashing around her, and it appeals to something, something in him, the sort of primordial woman without fear, vulnerable and needs protecting by a man. That ejects something from him, and he falls desperately in love with her. So that film in particular was very much about anima and the anima projection. If you haven't seen it, watch it. It's a really great film. It came out about 1980, I think, around then. Unfortunately, in real life, female pride and masculine prejudice all too often get in the way of marriage. Jane Austen's novel Pride and Prejudice can be read as a guide to transcending this to find true love. So there's a good reason why Pride and Prejudice is probably the most famous romantic novel ever written. It's hundreds of years old now, but yet people still read it. It's still in print. And other movies are modelled on it, or even written as Pride and Prejudice. And it's the whole idea that the woman, her pride and his prejudice, she's too low class for him. He's not going to marry someone as low class as her. And she's too proud to chase after him. Although they're actually very, very attracted to each other. So Pride and Prejudice is all about that, getting over your pride or over your prejudice and following your heart, really. So that's another lesson from there. Now, the story of Pygmalion would seem to have relevance to us today, and especially to Gen Z. It would seem that, except for some exceptions, with Gen Z, there is now a complete disconnect between the sexes. Angry women shout in the face of men that they are misogynist, sexist, and toxic. You heard that term, toxic masculinity. Well, no, masculinity is masculinity. It's being manly, being a man. And it's not necessarily toxic. Yes, there are psychopaths out there who are toxic, but funnily enough, you'll also find there are women who write to them in jail and even marry them, yeah, just because they're so drawn to someone that's toxic. So, don't hang it on the rest of us, ladies. The masculine is actually something else that you might find very useful in your life. Anyway, we'll come to that. So angry women shout in the faces of men that they are misogynist, sexist and toxic. They then wonder why men won't date them, let alone propose marriage. It is the Pygmalian Complex in action. So these are like the ladies of Cyprus who don't want anything to do with men, and then they're not getting married. And a famous line sung by Professor Higgins in My Fair Lady is, "Why can't a woman be like a man?" Well, here's one that's being like a man, and it's not very attractive. Of course, by the end of the play, he knows why. They're not men, but women. Consequently, they see and react to the world in a different way. And I'll come to that as we go on. You can almost imagine that woman is shouting, why can't a man be like a woman? Well, some of these women appear to think they would be happier if all men were like this guy. However, when Bud Light, that's the beer, employed him to advertise their beer, it did not have the desired reaction, getting women to drink their beer. That's the idea. Well, we'll show it's for women too. But unfortunately, they chose a trans model to do the advertising for them. And instead of broadening the appeal of Bud Light to women, real men, that's actual men, manly men, masculine men, toxic men, stopped buying the beer and the sales tanked. They didn't want to be associated with something that's being drunk by a guy who looks like this. And they lost millions, billions in sales. I think the brand is destroyed. It's probably hurt Budweiser in general, not just that particular brand of beer. Hard lessons. There's a saying, isn't there? Go woke, go broke. And it certainly is true, I think. Worse still, after so much rejection by Gen Z women, it appears that many Gen Z men have totally given up on asking women out on dates. I've heard that they stay at home instead, playing video games, combat or whatever on videos, or video football or something else. They're not going out trying to find women to have dates with. They're giving up. I think that's terrible. But we'll go into that further as we go on. Evidently, the dating rules have changed so much that Gen Z men prefer to remain single, playing their video games, rather than risk being called perverts or worse, just for attempting to chat up women. Yeah, if a guy's taking his heart in his hands and walking up to your table in a pub, and you ignore him or say something rude back to him and laugh with your friends, mocking him, he's not going to want to try doing that too often, is he? And men just start thinking, well, they don't want us. They give up. And you might think, well, that's fine by me. I'm in my 20s. I'm having a good time. I got my girlfriends and we go out partying. What do we need men for? Well, yes, you're not going to be in your 20s all your life, dear. Pretty soon those 20s are going to turn into 30s and those 30s into 40s. And you're going to regret if you haven't found yourself a husband by that time. But we'll press on. Instead, men indulge in private fantasies involving pictures of women. That is very much the complex we were seeing with the guy who's making his own statue. He's made his own pornography, isn't he? Something that he can lust after, because the real thing is not having anything to do with him. So this is no longer, and so men, back in I think this is from the 1980s, I found a tame picture. I wouldn't want to put anything stronger than this on the video. But anyway, this is back in the 80s. Things have gone much further than that now. This is no longer just Playboy magazine either. With the development of the internet, pornography has reached such depths of depravity that it would make even a Roman emperor blush. Worse still, video porn is now so widespread and uncontrolled that even young boys are seeing extraordinarily graphic images of sex acts. Like it or not, this too affects their attitude towards actual women. And I'm on the side of the women on this. I think it is disastrous. But if you're going to drive men out of your life, and particularly in your 20s, and have no time for them, what else are they going to do? They're lusty. They're lusty at that age. What else are they going to do? And the next trend is already starting in a modern manifestation of the Pygmalion syndrome. Female robots. No longer just mannequins or inflatable dolls. And we all laugh at the comedians who joke about men who go to bed with an inflatable doll. We think, oh, yeah, what a loser. Well, these are getting much more than that now. They can speak, they can move, they have facial expressions. And some are now so lifelike that it can be hard to tell the difference at first glance. I don't know what else they have lower down. I've never examined one, and I never will, but maybe it's moving in that direction as well. I don't know. A Pygmalion statue coming to life. So, like it or not, we're entering the sci-fi world of Blade Runner. Have you seen that movie, Blade Runner, where they have these robots who are so lifelike that you can't tell if they're real humans or if they're androids. And Blade Runner has to go out and kill them when they're past a certain age. They can't be allowed to live, I think, more than 6 years. I say live. They're manufactured machines, aren't they? But there's a lot of pathos to the film as well. If you haven't seen Blade Runner, get past the doom and gloom and raining all the time and try to see the message. It's really about our times and about loss of values and the sadness of it and the pathos of the poor old AI. So, like it or not, we're entering the sci-fi world of Blade Runner, where only an expert can identify a synth that's synthetic from a human. And this is the Pygmalion fantasy of bringing a sculpture to life as a female. This is a terrible reality. No marriage means no security, and in most cases, no babies. No babies means population extinction. Is that really what feminists want? Yeah, you might be happy today with your feminine friends, the sisterhood, but if the sisterhood aren't having babies, then it's going to be a very short-lived sisterhood. Anyway, fortunately, the answer is not too hard to find and can be surmised by studying pictures drawn from the alchemical books of the 17th century. So now I'm going to show you certain traditional esoteric teachings about sex that you will not have seen before, and it will explain everything to you. And once you understand this, once you get grounded in this, you'll not want to carry on fighting the sexes. It is a great eye-opener, and I'm going to show you the mystery now. Now, if you study these images carefully, they explain what has gone wrong in our times and show the way to put things right. This is a 17th century image from an alchemical book, I think published in 1626, I think, or something like that. In this image, we see a king representative of the male or solar energy. That's why you can see the sun shining up above him in the corner. And he's being joined to a queen, joined in marriage, that is. She's a female and represented by lunar energy. So you can see the moon above her. So you've got the male principle and the female principle being joined. And they're joined together by a bishop. Yeah, well, he represents the church and God. And God as a third unifying energy. And their marriage draws in clouds and rain, representing fruitfulness. So the bishop here is giving his blessing and passing down the blessings of God, the third energy, onto this marriage. And that brings about rain, which is, symbolic of fruitfulness. They're going to have children. And in this image, the king and queen are in a bath. Remember, these are chemical images as well as being life images. And behind the king is a tree bearing fruits of the sun. So it's got round fruits of the sun. You can't really make them out that clearly, but they're solar fruits, golden apples. And behind the woman is a tree that bears the fruits of the moon. So they're silvery apples. So the male apples and the female apples are coming together. The female apple tree and the male apple tree, they're coming together. And these are essences that are being joined or blended. And the eagle coming down represents the Logos, or Word of God. Yeah? Always the Logos in Christianity is represented by the eagle. That's because the eagle is the bird that flies the highest and gets whispered into its ear God's commandments, and he brings them down. And you see this reflected in churches with the eagle lectern. The word of God, the Bible, is placed on the eagle lectern to be read out. The Gospel's read by the priest or pastor or whatever it is of the church, reading the word of God, the Logos. So it's coming down as a blessing on the married couple. This diagram gives us clues about not just marriage, but sex in general. And I'm going to explain this to you now. Now, this is the normal view. I say normal, it's the current view of gender. So we generally discuss gender in terms of a single polarity. The 0 point is gender neutral, that's in the middle. And to the right in this diagram is female, negative. And to the left is male, positive. So yin and yang, either side of this, on this bar, like a bar magnet in the North and South Pole. And in the middle it's neutral. That's the generalized interpretation of gender of our day and age, and it's wrong. So the contemporary woke view of gender, the implication is that male and female are simply polarities with a rainbow spectrum of genders of varying sexuality between it. So you've got the extreme end, you've got the toxic masculine extreme end, and I suppose we should say the toxic feminine at the other end, and we've got other levels of gender in between. And that gives rise to a rainbow of colours that people can transform into. They can change their gender by the appearance of their bodies, in particular their genitals. And that's the contemporary view of woke, that anything's possible. The man can become a woman, the woman become a man. They just have to move along the pole and change their looks a bit. You know it's nonsense, and I know it's nonsense, but that's the contemporary view that's been spread. And unfortunately, a lot of Gen Z have taken this on board. Now I'm going to show you the real view as understood in ancient times and expressed in alchemical pictures. So we see here, and come back to this one first, the reality is that male and female are not simple polarities. They are at right angles to one another and therefore complementary, not opposite. So you see they're holding up, each has their lily, flowering lily, and they cross over at right angles. So the masculine vector goes in one direction and the feminine vector crosses it at right angles. And there are vectors of masculine polarity and vectors of feminine polarity, from more feminine, less feminine, or more masculine and less masculine, but they don't lead into each other. They're on different trees. You know, one is on the golden tree of the sun and the other's on the silver tree of the moon. And that's how things work in nature. So if male is pitch is like if you're on a boat and it's going up and down as it's going forwards, that's the pitch. And the female is a yaw. The yaw is the side-by-side motion of the ship. So it's pitching and it's yawing. It's here, it makes you seasick. That's one polarity. The male is flow and the female is static. So the male you can think of as flowing. It's like a tap. You turn on a tap, the water comes out, it's flowing. The female is like the bowl that catches the water and holds it, like a lake, catching the rain's coming down. And then the lake receives the water from the rivers. The rivers flow, but they go into the lake, which holds it. That's female. So the male is flow and the female is static containment. If the male is an electric field, this is for the scientists among you, the female is a magnetic field. You've heard of electromagnetic radiation, I'm sure. Think about light. you've heard that it's an electromagnetic wave. Well, let me just move this back for a minute so I can see you and you can see me. Yeah, if you have an electromagnetic wave, you have a pitching motion and you have a yawing motion, and the wave goes out sideways and forwards, and the magnetic field goes out sideways and the electric field goes out forwards. So the two things are going together, and that produces light, which you could say is manifestation of the third force, actually. So if male is a bee, then female is the flower. What do I mean there? Well, think about it. A flower is female, isn't it? And it opens because it wants to attract the bee, and it wants to attract the bee so the bee will pollinate it. But what's in it for the bee? Well, the bee receives nectar from the flower. The flower gives it a reward, something sweet. And the bee comes along, he sucks up the sweetness, and in the process he pollinates the flower. Well, think about it. Think about what sex is all about. There's a reward in terms of pleasure, but the purpose of that is to pollinate or impregnate the woman in the act. So the whole purpose of sex is really about having children. We managed to circumvent that by using contraceptions of one sort or another, but if you thwart the process of having children too long, you won't be able to have any. And that's, that is a great sadness, because actually the child, the manifestation of the child, is also a huge pleasure for the man and the woman. To have children is a blessing. Anyway, let me get back to where I was. So, the battle of the sexes is really a huge misunderstanding. Much, if not most, of the problems of modern life come down to feminized men and masculinized women. Think about it. I think that's true. When that happens, society decays. Perversion becomes the new norm, and sterility is the outcome. You don't like me using the word perversion, but that just means being deviant from normal. Normal is what actually produces fruit, in this case children. If you do what's not normal, then you're not going to have any, and it's not going to produce fruit. You're going to be sterile. And we see this in increasing numbers of unmarried singletons, and this leads to declining birth rates. In this way, even advanced civilizations fade out and die. Now, this is not the whole picture. True love is not binary. It works according to the law of three. I said that earlier to you. And this is more clear in this diagram. There is the masculine or positive force, and he's holding his lily, and she's taking hold of it. And the positive is transmissive, urgent, stimulating, and dynamic. That's masculine for you. It is ambitious and seeks to discover new possibilities. That's the nature of masculinity. Men are always seeking new thrills. They're always seeking new mountains to climb. Look at Elon Musk with his big spaceships. That's ultimate masculinity, wanting to put the first big spaceship on Mars. That's greater than climbing Everest, isn't it? To actually want to reach out beyond the Earth, to break the limits of Mother Earth, and to actually go to another planet. That's masculinity in all its glory. And you might think that that's a stupid thing to do, but that is what how men are. They want to achieve things. That's the nature. And then there is the feminine or negative force. It is receptive, nurturing, amplifying, and growth-oriented. However, it is also very conservative. That might surprise the feminist among you, but the feminine energy is very conservative. It doesn't like change. It wants to conserve. It wants to preserve. And finally, there is the third force or energy of the universe. It acts as a unifying power that reconciles male and female in a common act of creation. So that is the dove coming down, or the eagle sometimes, bring the Holy Ghost energy, which unites the two together, the blessing that's put down on the married couple. So people understood this in the past. Science teaches us that only men have the Y chromosome. I put these on axes so you can see it more clearly. It is present not just in their testicles, but every cell of their body. So men carry the Y-axis, the Y chromosome, you could say. Women have an extra X chromosome. So men have got some X, but they also got this Y that moves them onto the other polarity, or the other vector. And women have a double load of X chromosome. It is why their female attributes are stronger. Men have breasts. Yeah, we do. We have nipples. But they're recessive and non-lactating. Yeah, they only got one X. If they had two X's, they would be women, wouldn't they? And it would be a different story, but they've got an XY. And that Y is what gives them their masculine characteristics. And gender is determined from the time of conception. And there is no changing it. I'm sorry, girls. I'm sorry, boys. You cannot change your gender. You can change certain aspects of your body, yeah. But a man who has his genitals removed is not then a woman. He's a eunuch. He's a castrated man. And the same with women who have their ovaries removed and their female parts removed. That doesn't turn them into men, even if they have something made surgically that resembles a male member. It's not a male member, is it? It's a something else. And they certainly can't impregnate another woman. So it's nonsense. And we have to recognize that and speak the truth. So what men and women find attractive in each other is not really the physical body, although this is a reflection of it. The real attraction is in a person's radiation. We are not mannequins, but living beings, and as such, we broadcast our values to the world. We do this through our radiation, often referred to as our aura. We each of us have an aura, and other people sense it. If we resonate strongly to someone's vibrations, there will be a mutual attraction. It is no surprise that doctors tend to marry other doctors, or alternatively nurses. They are on the same wavelength. Yeah, they're in the health profession, aren't they? Both of them. And they're on that wavelength. That's what interests them. So they're going to team up together, and you'll find that with the society you grow up in. You're going to look for people who are in that society. It's not unnatural. Kings tend to marry princesses, don't they? Royals marry royals. It's why it was such a shock when Prince Charles married Lady Diana and she wasn't a royal. It meant that she had got to start learning what it meant to be a royal, and it had tragic consequences, didn't it? And women are attracted to men who know themselves and have goals. As men get into their 30s, these are likely to be more evident objectively, and not just as potential. Women are attracted to men who are comfortable in their own masculinity. This means a sense of purpose and maturity, that they have goals that they are actively pursuing. A man can be materially poor, yet have tremendous charisma if he is not shirking responsibility, but rather in pursuit of a definite goal. And real men don't chase women, but rather chase their destiny, their own destiny. And women, at least those who share these goals, find this overwhelmingly attractive. What women find most attractive and unattractive are man boys who want a wife to mother them and not their children. Superficially, if the man boy inherits large amounts of money, then he can be attractive for mercenary reasons. However, marriages based on lust for another's wealth seldom bring happiness to either partner. She will likely cheat on him for excitement or leave him for someone richer. You cannot force love to blossom. Often it comes about in unexpected ways. It is not always the handsomest man or the most beautiful woman who attracts. It is down to being in phase. So that you have an aura and a radiation. It's going to be in phase with some people and not with others. And the little Cupid who fires his arrows of love can also intervene. Cupid represents a soul that wants to come into the world and is seeking parents. So that's why Cupid is shown as a baby. Yeah, the baby of love, baby of Aphrodite. He's seeking to get a pregnancy to happen. And this is why we call them love children, if they're born outside of marriage, but through love. It's Cupid wanting to come into this world. Finally, don't leave it too long. If you meet a person that ticks most of your boxes, don't wait for Mr. or Mrs. Perfect to come along. Nobody's perfect. We all have our faults. Marriage is really nature's approved way of bringing children into the world. Don't be fooled by pedophobes. I said pedophobe, don't like children, not pedophile. Pedophobes posing as savants. No blessing. Having them will teach you more about self-development than any book on the subject. Get married young if you can, and enjoy sharing your life with a helpmeet. That's what they call them, Eve in the Bible, Adam's helpmeet. Live life together and enjoy meeting your grandchildren. You will deserve it. So then, there you have it. Please take this in good heart. Don't be insulted by anything I say here, but listen to these words. I've got a bit of experience in this area. So take it from there, and don't be put down or put off by this notion of there's no women in the world, there's no men anywhere, where have they all gone? Well, they're out there, but you've got to find them, and it's down to you. So good luck, my friends. Good luck.